Watching Fox melt down as Donald Trump's campaign continues to rapidly decline in the polls. It's a sight to behold. And you see Fox trying to help out the Trump campaign, but the Trump surrogates like Jason Miller and Lara Trump are also just so bad. And then Fox tries to throw in Mark Levin because Trump loves Mark Levin. That's how Mark Levin talks. And Mark Levin says things like, the number one characteristic of a democracy is authoritarianism and Marxism. It's like, dude, what are you saying? So just take a look at what happened over the weekend. So you had Lara Trump go on Fox, and she said one of the big issues that she has, that their campaign is very concerned about, illegal citizens, illegal American citizens, one of their top priorities. Play this clip.
So whether you're talking about ensuring that illegals are clean off the voter rolls, they can't register to vote in certain states, or generally sending out the message, Maria, that if you're a person who is attempting to cheat in our elections, or an illegal citizen attempting to illegally vote in our elections, we will find you, we'll track you down, and we'll prosecute you to the full extent of the law. We're watching everything. We're filing lawsuits when necessary, and we're making sure we have people everywhere votes are being cast and counted to have eyes on everything.
Unbelievable.
What? Then you had Jason Miller, one of Donald Trump's other top surrogates, who's also one of the people running his campaign. He goes on Fox and he's asked by the host, so do you think Vice President Kamala Harris and President Biden should get any credit for the fact that the economy is booming, the stock market is hitting record highs? Watch what Jason Miller says.
Well, on that point, and you have every right to say that she was part of this administration whose record you criticize, and obviously some of it is unpopular. Don't they also get credit for things that are positive? For example, the record-breaking stock market, the Dow breaking 41,000 on Friday.
Well, that's simply because businesses think that President Trump is going to come back in, and so they're energized. A big part of that RFK Jr. endorsement that we had on Friday, which is huge. When you look at the numbers state by state, some of the states could be upwards of 13,000 to 20,000 votes. Other states, the RFK Jr. endorsement could boost by as much as 40 or even 50,000 votes. When you think about how close the margins are in this campaign, that endorsement alone could put President Trump over the top.
We'll come back to.
Yep. In other words, heads I win and tails you lose. Wasn't it 3 weeks ago where Donald Trump was bragging about his efforts to try to tank our economy, and he put in all caps, "It's crashing, it's crashing, it's time for you to panic, just like I told you it was going to be," right? Like Donald Trump actually rooting to hurt us the same way he killed the bipartisan border deal whose lead negotiator was James Lankford, the conservative Republican senator from Oklahoma, because Trump's like, I want to create chaos that's a really horrible Trump impression. I want to create chaos at the border because that's a winning issue for me. Or when Donald Trump threatens the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Chairman Powell, not to lower interest rates because Trump thinks that it would be a harmful issue for him if interest rates went down and we, the people, benefited from that. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. All right, then Lara Trump, more of her on Fox this weekend, and she says that Democrats are very scared that RFK has endorsed Donald Trump, and we're going to go up like 10 points now. We're going to go up so big. Here, play this clip.
How important was the RFK Jr. support?
Oh, I think it's huge. And I think the Democrats are very upset about that. And that's great. And I actually think he did a great thing when he came out and not just said, I'm endorsing Donald Trump, but here's why. Because the Democrats are a threat to our country. I could not associate with a party that has been in my family and is integral to my family and who we are for my entire life. And I thought it was amazing to see him come out. I think you're going to see within the swing states where he has taken himself off the ballot, the percentage bump that I believe it will give Donald Trump, I think is going to be huge. And I think you'll see that in the next round of polling.
Wow. All right.
Okay, Lara Trump has no clue what she's talking about. I also find it interesting as Donald Trump's main attack on Vice President Kamala Harris is Kamala Harris is against fracking. Let me just be very clear right now. One of the things that's very important to the Biden-Harris administration is the climate. They've passed major climate change legislation. They've signed it into law, that is. But we also have more domestic oil drilling right now than ever in the history of the United States. Gas prices have come down because President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris have engaged in some of the most incredible oil trading in the history of the United States, strategically using America's strategic reserves, selling it high, replenishing it low, increasing the supply, reducing the demand, reducing the costs, breaking the OPEC cartel. Pretty incredible stuff. But look at what Robert Kennedy Jr. said. I will ban fracking, which provides the feedstock for most of the plastics produced in the U.S. And so it's really not that Democrats are upset about the endorsement. Frankly, mostly all of the pollsters say it's not going to make any material difference at all. It's just perplexing. Like, you had, weeks ago, the MAGA movement saying things like this about RFK Jr. RFK Jr. was asked about the allegations that he sexually assaulted his kid's 23-year-old babysitter. His answer, I'm not a church boy. I have so many skeletons in my closet. Remember, he drove his ex-wife to unalive herself through rampant cheating? That's where MAGA was then. And then, like, the main MAGA influencer, Cat Turd. By the way, how weird is it that there's a MAGA influencer named Cat Turd who, like, has his own podcast? But Cat Turd goes, after RFK Jr. admitted to supporting full-term abortion today, in my opinion, anyone who still supports him is pure evil. There's no gray area here for me. Again, if you still support him or even retweet him after he admitted this, I honestly believe you're pure evil. And now the MAGA War Room posted this video of RFK Jr. on Fox, and then Cat Turd's like, fire. This is awesome. This endorsement is awesome. But that's the MAGA movement for you. Going back to Jason Miller over here. Here, Jason Miller talks about how he claims Vice President Kamala Harris is the real person who's been running the nation for the past 3.5 years. Play this.
I'll go back to one thing real quick here, Howie. When we talk about owning it, 2 months ago, Joe Biden stood on that debate stage with President Trump, and President Trump did great, knocked him out. But it was clear from that debate that Joe Biden wasn't in charge of putting on his own socks, let alone running the country. It was clear at that moment that Kamala Harris has been running everything for the past 3.5 years. She's been in charge of this.
She's vice president, and vice presidents don't set all the policies. Does she play a role? Absolutely.
But, Howie, who's in charge then? We know Biden's not in charge. You've seen him. He can't put two sentences together. That debate was so horrible.
He made a deal for some of our hostages with Russia.
Well, hold on.
And then Jason Miller tries to gaslight us more and says that Donald Trump's taking very tough interviews. Oh, really? Like Sean Hannity and Laura Ingraham. Here, play this clip.
They should. And President Trump is out there taking interviews, tough interviews too. I mean, this isn't powder puff football. He's taking tough questions, tough interviews.
So you have all of that going on. Then you have, as I said, Mark Levin. That's how he talks. And Mark Levin's like, ah. And here Mark Levin says that dictators in the world, what do they all have in common? This is Mark Levin goes, what do all dictators in the world have in common? Well, according to Mark Levin, they talk about democracy. Here, play this clip.
Democracy. Voting. You know who likes the word democracy the most? Dictators, fascists, Marxists, autocrats. And apparently the Democrats, who don't really like to practice democracy. You know, they have voting in places like Russia and Iran, Venezuela and Turkey, North Korea, Syria, Cuba, Uzbekistan, Zimbabwe, Somalia, and 100 other dictatorships, brutal regimes, genocidal regimes. They claim to be democracies that have the vote.
What? And then here, Mark Levin, again, they go back to their formula is so amateurish and so silly, and it's just name calling. And look, you may have been watching this, a former kind of Trump supporter, Republican or MAGA. Like, you have to look at this now and go, what? It's so obvious and silly. They have a guy yell who talks like this, and then Mark Levin's like, if you're a Marxist, you're a communist. You're Marxist communist. You're Marxist communist. I'm a fascist. Show yourself. Play this clip.
Now, if you're going to turn America into some kind of a Marxist Islamist state, some kind of a hellhole, then show yourself. Reveal yourself. Be the tough prosecutor. Be the courageous senator, the tough questioner. And let us confront you. Let us question.
Oh my gosh, it's so odd right there. And then Mark Levin says, you know, on these Democrats, Kamala Harris, she wants to eliminate gasoline. Here, play this clip.
That means nationalizing drug companies. You want to eliminate the oil industry and gasoline. Do you know where electricity comes from? You don't want us to have a choice of what kind of car we can have, what kind of toaster, what kind of lawnmower, what kind of home we can have.
As I said, America's energy independent now for the first time. Like, that's just the fact. America is the leading producer of oil in the entire world right now. So, like, what are you even talking about? But I want to leave you with this clip. You may have seen it from the DNC. It's one of my favorite moments. May even be my favorite moment. Ana Navarro. You know, my favorite speech was Ana Navarro, who grew up in Nicaragua and fled. She talks about how she knows what Marxism is. And Donald Trump's statements, Donald Trump's words, are identical to the Marxist and communist leaders who had taken over some South American countries. She goes, they're identical. Here, play this clip.
Let's be serious. Donald Trump and his minions call Kamala a communist. I know communism. I fled communism from Nicaragua when I was 8 years old. I don't take it lightly. And let me tell you what communist dictators do. And it's never just for one day. They attack the free press. They call them the enemy of the people, like Ortega does in Nicaragua. They put their unqualified relatives in cushy government jobs so they can get rich of their positions, like the Castros do in Cuba. And they refuse to accept legitimate elections when they lose and call for violence to stay in power, like Maduro is doing right now in Venezuela. Now, you tell me something. Do any of those things sound familiar? Is there anybody running for president who reminds you of that? And I know one thing, it's not Kamala Harris. That is not the America we love. It's not the land of freedom we treasure. Last night, we heard President Biden say that he loves his job, but he loves his country more. Every American needs to love our country more. Every American has the duty to put our country first. Country first before party. Country first before political ambition. Country first before habit. And in this election, putting country first means one thing and one thing only: voting for Kamala Harris.
And she's right. You know, one of the things, I'll leave you with this thought, that Republicans and MAGA have been able to weaponize is the language of leftists versus right, conservative versus liberal. The very framing they've been able to weaponize, because if you think about in South American countries or in Cuba, leftist has always been associated, like the idea of a leftist there, leftist populists, like a Hugo Chavez, a Maduro, a Castro, right? Like that's leftist populist. But that's not what a left liberal is in the United States. In fact, Donald Trump's MAGA movement, this whole idea of, you know, these tariffs, which are actually taxes on consumers, and this, you know, anti-immigration, anti-migrant, and it's the same type of populism and nativism that actually exists there. And so the language is off. But MAGA and Republicans, not the mainstream Republicans, but the MAGA mutation, they've been able to utilize that framework, if you will. When really Trump, Maduro, Trump, Chavez, Trump, Castro, very similar figures in terms of the dictatorship element. So I'll leave you with that. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 3 million together. I think we're going to get there the next day or two. Thanks for watching.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Meidas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.